The night my life was altered forever was the night I was visited by 8 otherworldly beings. Or rather, I visited them. It was a clear night, and the heavens were shining in their full glory. A beautiful symphony of twinkling lights played together for millions of years, converging on my face as I stared with deep, struck awe. The beauty stretched above me filled me with purpose and drive. Lying with my back to the earth, I slowly lost myself within the deep purple beneath the stars. I found my attention tethered to Andromeda, the last thing I saw before I drifted to sleep. I awoke somewhere else. Sitting up, I saw the ground on which I lay was translucent, with distortions of all manner of the rainbow. Assuming it was glass, I slowly steadied myself to my feet. Turning around, I saw behind me a similar sight from my night on the ground. An endless expanse of stars. However, there were no constellations I could recognize. It was as if I was seeing a new starscape. Time there felt sluggish, like when you're wading in a pool and your legs move slower as they fight against the water, except it felt that way in my mind. When I took a step, I would move further than my legs could carry me in a single stride. I looked at my hands and stared at them. They appeared normal, but my brain knew there was something about them I wasn't seeing. Imagine peering down a dark passageway, knowing there's someone in that darkness, but you can't see exactly where they are. I felt impaired, but my faculties still seemed about me. I turned away from the starry view to see a staircase rising high into gas? Moving closer, I realized that beyond the floor and staircase was nebulous gas. It was thick and all shades of green, blocking my view of the stars behind. After multiple attempts to ascend the stairs, I finally managed to grasp an understanding of how movement worked there, wherever there was. As I climbed, I could see breaks in the gas, revealing breathtaking slivers of the star-speckled void. Hours, days, perhaps even years passed as I made my way up the stairs. I don't know how long I kept at it, but it didn't matter in the end. While I moved, another thought struck me dumbfounded. Where was all the radiant light coming from? It was as if there were bright streetlights mere meters to my sides. When I turned to look, I saw nothing. I knew there was something there as I could see its influence. I wasn't blinded by looking toward the lights, but that feeling of confusion hit me again as when I looked at my hands. Failing to reach a conclusion, I pressed on. After what felt like eons of marching, I finally reached the summit. Before me lay a field of gray, sand-like particles. It was a desert, but with the dull silver instead of gold. It seemed to go on forever, but there were patterns raked neatly, like a Zen garden that stretched for kilometers. When I turned to look at the stairs, they were gone, replaced by the unending sand. Turning again, I headed off in the direction I faced coming up the stairs. My feet left behind prints in the sand, but were quickly raked over as I walked. Eventually, I came to a small structure, a golden bowl suspended by nothing. Underneath it were 3 spheres, floating in gold just like the bowl, one atop another. It reached to the height of my elbows. I gazed into the bowl and found it full of the same grains on the ground. However, it was uneven and had patterns in it. When I looked up, I beheld an area that was darker than the void itself. I couldn't tell if it was a circle or sphere, but it was black beyond anything I had ever seen. It hung over me like an absence of reality. Then, without thinking, I dug my hand into the bowl and threw a fistful of sand into the emptiness. The particles disappeared as they entered, but nothing extraordinary came to happen. Again, I reached my hand into the bowl, and as I sunk my fingers in deep, I found something. The bowl was only as deep as my wrists, yet I was up to my shoulders in the substance. I grasped the item and pulled it to the surface. It was a golden ball, covered in etchings and symbols. Underneath the bowl, I saw all 3 spheres still in place. And before I could think about the consequences, I launched the sphere into the black hole. The ball was absorbed almost instantly, but the blackness shrunk down, smaller and smaller, eventually blinking out of existence. A loud grinding, like stone on stone, engulfed the area, and the bowl began to overflow with sand. It piled onto the ground and reached up to touch the lowest sphere. Once it did, the sound stopped, and the flow of sand ceased. I peered into the bowl to see it full of a highly reflective liquid, but my reflection was missing. Again, action took hold before thought, and I reached to the ground to grab a handful of sand, which I then sprinkled into the bowl. After the ripples subsided and the surface calmed, I saw an image take form. It was a face. It had pale, gray skin like the ground which I stood, and a black rectangular marking across her eye, extending to about 1 centimeter above and below. The lips were a darker shade of the skin, and I noticed the features were strikingly feminine. She wore a hood, which hid her hair. I studied her features for a while, trying to assess where the sense of familiarity originated in my memory. Suddenly, her eyes shot open, and I recoiled, falling to the ground. When I looked up, I saw the same woman, floating about the bowl. Her eyes, they were the brightest shade of cyan I had ever seen. She wore no shoes, and was clad in a cape that was pure white, covering her from her shoulders to her wrists and shins. Her cloak was adorned with a thin line of bright gold following the trim of her robe, and 3 royal purple ribbons flowed off her, moving in an imperceptible breeze. I sat there in silence, and words failed to find their way out of me. "Stand," she commanded, though her lips didn't part. Her voice was loud and prominent, but her words were echoed by dozens of others, all different, but hers sung proudest. "Earthspawn, son of soul, rise to your feet." I obeyed. What else could I do? As I got to my feet, I saw 7 other figures behind her. Some were masculine, some were feminine, but all were distinctly humanoid. They bore similar styles of clothing and accessories, but all were distinguishable. When I stood straight, I noticed the bowl and spheres had sunken into the sand. "You have done well to find the council, Soulborn." Her voice was both soothing and maddening simultaneously. "Do you know where you are?" No, I don't," I stammered, unsure if to remain or flee in terror. "Intriguing," she said, with a voice that sounded like vague amusement. "How is that intriguing?" I replied. "We have been trying to reach you for some time." Her voice hinted at a smirk, but her expression remained emotionless. "You are the final piece. What is it that you remember?" "Well, I remember I woke up on a glass—" "Prior," she interrupted. "I was stargazing." "Prior." She stopped me again. "How far back do you want me to remember?" I asked impatiently. "Do you remember your birth?" "Of course I don't. Who remembers their own birth?" "It seems you have been born many times, but you remember none of them," she stated. "Soulborn, do you know your father?" "Yes, he was a farmer." "Wrong," she interjects. "What do you mean, wrong? How could I not remember my own father? And how would you even know who my father is?" "You have no father. You are a bastard of the universe." Her words confused me. I remember growing up, and could recall many life memories and milestones. This had to be a trick. "What are you saying?" I asked angrily. "The stars foretold of your creation and of your imprisonment. Your destiny was impeded by a dark force, and now you are trapped in this human form." This doesn't make any sense. I'm just an insignificant man. Does it make any more sense than waking up somewhere outside of your galaxy? She quizzed. Her question made me stop thinking and realize just how crazy this all was. "I'm just asleep, and this is all a dream," I countered. "Any second I'll wake up back on the roof of my father's ranch." "No such events will transpire. Take my hand," she said, enticingly, as she outstretched her hand. Hesitantly, I took it. When my skin touched hers, the world faded away, and I was watching, reliving, memories. She showed me the birth of my galaxy, the Milky Way. She showed me the constellation which brought me into this world. From Soul I emerged, an incorporeal entity whose self-designated the task of preserving life. I planted the seeds of life on Earth and kept it safe from harm. I nurtured and grew the tiniest of beings, coding and recoding them to make them better and hardier. Soon, they were able to live and change on their own. I diminished my role in their everyday survival. However, I still protected them from the threats of the cosmos. Eventually, man arose, and I was quite happy with them. However, in my birth, a twin was created. But instead of being born into the light, he was cast in shadow. He loathed the light I wielded, but at such an infantile stage, my light triumphed, and he sought refuge within the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way. As time passed, his power grew fierce, relentless, and unconquerable. He emerged from hiding to find me on Earth, enjoying the life I created. He saw no potential in mankind, and sealed me away on Earth as a human, or, rather, the first Homo sapien. Generation after generation, I was reincarnated as my sons. When my light was smothered, the influence I cast on the universe was felt far and wide. I hadn't realized the power I held was perceivable from so vast distances away. Without my light, other beings took notice. Hateful, vile, and evil beings were allowed to spread through my system unimpeded, now that their guardian had fallen. But beings of good nature also took notice, namely, the Council. The Council was 13 beings who worshipped my light and were capable of using it to their advantage. However, they soon came to realize their own power. When I was trapped, the Council decided to traverse the local group in search of me. Along the way, 5 of them were lost, and the remaining 8 were barely able to escape alive. These 8 then set up temporary homes in Andromeda, not knowing that they were 1 galaxy away from their goal. There, they observed the stars, grew in power, and understood the vital aspects of the universe. Occasionally, my light would shine through my prison, if only for moments at a time. This was enough for them to triangulate my position. They couldn't reach out to me, but I could come to them, so they built a great structure and attempted to reach me. And tonight, I answered their call. Your prison is currently weak, but will grow stronger soon. Let us help your light radiate your cell away and bring you to freedom. I now stood on an upside-down golden pyramid with chiseled etchings covering almost every inch of it. Allow us to restore your form and balance the nature of death. The one above me was the first to speak.
Shed these ties that bind. This pitiful brain is shackled outside your one true mind.
With that, he plunged his hands into my skull to restore my ethereal mind, allowing me all the understanding the human mind cannot hold. Next was the one at my eyes.
Be rid of these eyes, as they cannot see, the extent of which is your destiny.
She then placed her hands across my face, covering my eyes. Suddenly, I could see in all manners in which I chose. Stolen from the strongest black holes, my pupils were forged, and from the corona of the sun were my irises formed. The 4 at my limbs chanted next. Flay this skin, muscle and bone, rebuild with gravity, so that the darkness will atone. Their rhyme had deconstructed my body, only to rebuild it stronger. With starlight, they stitched my new skin, and with neutrons, they solidified my bones. Finally, the one at my back sang, Let your new form accept my touch and grow forth mighty wings, fused to your soul, crafted from the expansion of things. She reached into my back and tied wings of dark energy to my spine, and weave them to spread proud behind me. The one to which I conversed spoke last.
Your new form complete, your power restored. You have been given the tools to fight back the storm.
My vision went white, and my ears began ringing as gravity waves of my power spread throughout space. When my sight was restored, I saw all 8 members of the council knelt down before me. "I owe you all a great deal," I said. "You have my thanks, and I will come to you whenever you call." With that, I spread my wings and started back home to Earth to protect mankind from the darkness to come.
A huge thank you to all my poltergeists. Stephen Swiftbird, Shadow Blackhawk, Spirit Father, King Gallant, JTX31, Joker Smurf 3, Daniel O'Connell, Gary, Forever, Nathan Konirk, John, Twisted Skipster, and Benjamin Croon. And a huge thank you to one of my apparitions this week, Alex Shaffer, who, coincidentally, wrote the amazing story that you just heard. Your donations are much appreciated, so thank you from the bottom of my heart.
The house was quaint and plain, so it was hard to imagine so many people were afraid of it. 342 Hill Lane was said to be one of the most haunted places on the East Coast. People started to report seeing figures in the windows that would disappear in the blink of an eye. The demon of Green Lake was on a rampage during the 1960s. Personally, I thought it was bull. Guess who's the fool now?